Everyone is welcome here, it's time to make new friends. Fill your Glencairn. Share a dram with the spirit of Edmonton. Luncha!
Welcome, whiskey friends. Welcome, viewer. Welcome to our fantastic panel. These three gentlemen with me. It's the After Drams. Means it's time to unwind. So put your feet up, grab a dram or two, and relax. And as a quick recap, I'm going to say it was a fantastic evening so far with author Carlo DeVito, this right here to the side. We discussed many a topic from his book, and here's the book right here, The Spirit of Rye. Over 400 expressions to celebrate the rye revival. It was fun. It was informative. It was tasty. And we're going to do a couple of introductions if we could right now. And let's start with Davin, and then we'll go to Dom. And please tell us what you have in your glasses as well, Jen. Davin.
Davin de Cardinal here, and I'm drinking what's left of my Crown Royal Winter Wheat. I have another bottle on the way. Oh yeah, I wrote those two books that Dolph was holding up. One of them.
Yeah, those two things. Yeah.
And I love those books.
And what is that Crown Royal concert? Just to tell us a little bit about it, because it has a lot of speak going on line right now about that.
Well, sure, I can tell you a little bit about it if you want. This it's in the Crown Royal, a noble collection. They do a special release every year of really high end rye. It's very flavorful. You can taste the wheat in there like Wonder Bread or something like that, but there's some nuttiness that comes from malted barley, and there's got the real elegance of Canadian whiskey. I think from the base whiskey they use. That's the thing about Crown Royal. They're making this noble collection great big whiskeys, but they're not losing the elegance of the blend. They're not. They really. Well, of course, as you were saying, Carl. I mean, they really kind of invented the Canadian way of blending whiskey, and they're really following it through. So it's a wonderful whiskey, and it won by a mile in the Canadian Whiskey Awards.
Huh. Interesting.
Thank you very much. And let's go to Dom. What do you have? Well, introductions first.
Well, I'm Don DeMonte, the owner of Lastra Distillery, and I am drinking our Loose Toque rye that took a bronze in the Canadian Whiskey Awards. Awesome. And unfortunately, it's the only rye I have left that I had in the competition. Everything else is sold out already.
Nice. And I'm drinking that one. That's the classic Lastra rye. I've got the cast strength rye back there as well, and I asked my wife to find it, and she said, "No, you go ahead." But I do have the Lastra whiskey in the 6 behind me as well, which was a winner last night.
Yes, it was.
Was that bronze as well? The whiskey in the 6?
Whiskey in the 6 was bronze. The corn whiskey, cast strength corn, took a silver. We're very pleased with that. Yeah.
And I got the corn right behind that one. The Scorn. There we go. And mine's cast strength. Did the cast strength win?
I'm telling you, it's a mind blower.
Was it the cast strength that won?
Yeah, it was the cast strength. Yeah.
Congratulations, buddy.
Congratulations, sir.
And Thank Carlo, you. What you got in the glass now?
I am drinking the Crown Royal rye, the Harvest. So it's a wonderful whiskey. I'm Carlo DeVito, and I'm the author of The Spirit of Rye, which can teach you all about rye, or you can use it to defend yourself in a bar fight.
I love it. We were talking about that. It's got some heft. We were saying it's heft, literally, and, well, physically, literally as well. I'm Dolph. I'm the president of the Alberta Scotch Society. I'm your host tonight, and I'm keeping these cats in line, but I can't because we're going to talk about stuff, and they're going to all talk about whatever they want to talk about. But I got to tell you, I'm drinking this. So I've got the Lastra rye. I might go to the whiskey in the 6 rye to go side by side with this at one point in time. I've got the Redemption rye, which I'm still sipping on as well. This is a 95.5 blend MGP, and we're going to talk about that as well, and maybe I'll get into the winter wheat right here at one point, but that might be the after dram when everyone's away. So thank you all for coming. I appreciate it. I'm glad you all came. And Don, this is important because we're talking about the grains, we're talking about rye, we're talking about new rye, and your partner was more northernly, and I think it was by what city was it? Where you have a new supplier of it's not Timmins. Anyways, Peterborough. Was he by Peterborough? And having the new rye or the new strain of rye that you're going to incorporate?
Well, we've got some new rye and some new red corn, and it's actually from the Ottawa Valley. Yeah.
Ooh,
it's from the Ottawa Valley. And it's all done in regenerative farming. So we the majority of what we did is the red corn, and as a white spirit coming off the still, it's phenomenal. It's really flavorful. I would venture to say it will compete with Scorn once we get it aged. Yeah, if I get the right barrels and I get it done the way I want, I think it's going to be really good. And the rye is super spicy too. We're really happy with it.
Well, we're happy with all of it, except for the three things that we interviewed. Carlo, you might not have heard about this. We did three whiskeys that, what do we call that? What was our day? The Whiskey's Gone Wild is what we did. So Don had three of his most mature rye whiskeys that he had produced. But there was a problem. He didn't want to put them out. And I've got them on the shelf. I'll show you in a second. But two of them I was saying, yeah, I would still buy these two. And he said, no, because there's this wrong with it. No, there's this wrong with it. And there was a third that there was everything
wrong with it.
It smelled like paint thinner. It really did, but he didn't put it out. And it was a great conversation. We're on for quite a while talking about
I'm very jealous.
People put stuff out that they shouldn't, but he wouldn't do it. So it really endeared Don to me as well. But I was thinking, because Davin said this at the Canadian Whiskey Awards last night when we was talking about 40 Creek, that they redistilled the rye. Don, maybe that, and you talked about that before, maybe you're going to be redistilling your rye and then aging that again, much like they did at 40 Creek this year. And they won a gold medal, did they not, for that, Davin?
Oh yeah, that was a gold medal.
Yeah. And Carlo, did you try the Scorn, the sprouty corn?
No, I did not. No, I got the one bottle that you showed earlier. I got to taste.
Okay. Well, Davin, by the way, I should have said thank you and congrats on your 12th Canadian Whiskey Awards. I'll have you talk about that now or a couple minutes, whenever you're happy about that. It was really fun. And Don was on there as well. And Carlo, I think you promoted it a little bit on your online. I think on Facebook you were
yeah, I tried. Yeah,
everyone's getting behind you, Davin. I think that's fantastic. I love it.
No, it's really gone viral. I don't want to steal from Carlo's book club here, so I'll talk about whiskey awards, but I'll hold the book up.
Okay, I'll do that too. You go ahead and talk.
It's our 12th year of the Canadian Whiskey Awards. It's really gone viral this year. We had I think like 270 different publications were carrying it the next day, from India to Switzerland to America, of course, United Kingdom, all around the world. We're getting traffic like crazy on it. Like last year, I think we had 14 million hits in the first day, and maybe 18 million across time. I can't remember. But anyways, it's really gone crazy.
Fantastic.
Crazy this year. But we're also seeing a kind of a settling Canadian whiskey. Canadian whiskey, it was sort of going in the direction of big flavor, and John Hall started it with his John's Private Cask, which was I called that a shock and awe whiskey at the time, because it was the most powerful whiskey that was coming out of Canada at that particular time. Now I've pulled out some old whiskeys from the 70s and 80s and 90s to show that Canada used to make whiskey like that as well. But anyways, and then of course that we've got the Noble Collection, Crown Royal. Honestly, Crown Royal, they sell as much whiskey as the next 6 most popular Canadian whiskey brands put together.
Devin, you said that before, but is that worldwide or in the States or in the
That's
in
North
the
America.
States and
That's in
Canada?
North America, because not all these whiskeys are available worldwide.
Right. But Crown Royal is the 4th largest selling whiskey in the world, period.
It's the third. And,
Third. Fine,
Don't correct.
you know what? I have the
I knew he knows better. You know,
I don't have the 2021 stats. The 2020, it was number 3. But it's number 2 in North America. Only Jack Daniel's sells more. Only Jack
It's
Daniel's.
amazing. I didn't realize that when I first started working on the book, how huge Crown Royal had become. It was fascinating.
Well, it's been big for a long time.
Yeah.
You know, that's the only distillery in Canada that still survives entirely on whiskey. And they have 2 facilities. They have that great big massive distillery in Montreal,
Right.
and they have Gimli, and the only thing they make is whiskey. It's just, it's phenomenal. And they're just going full bore. But anyways, the awards really have been quite successful. We're seeing now that Canadians want big flavor, but they want a return to elegant whiskey, which means great blending. So blended in the Seagrams style, if you want to make, as you described so beautifully, Carlo, in your show tonight. But let's talk about Don's winning whiskeys, and let's talk about Carlo's book now.
Well, thanks for that segue. Done. I was going to cut in anyways, Dev. I don't have a problem cutting in. I'm a junior high teacher, man. I can cut into anything. I'm good. But this is a great question for all 3 of you, because it adds to a segment of your industry that I don't pay attention to, but I think both of you, and all 3 of you, would have. So my first one's this. You both know, we're all 3 of you by now, I love my quotes. So I'm going to start with this. Audrey Sanders had changed the entire landscape of cocktails in America from the moment she opened Pegu. Could you call it
Club.
Pegu?
Yep.
Pegu Club doors. Audrey's program revolutionized the American bar business and is responsible for helping resurrect gin and rye whiskey. You also quote Christine Sismondo, and here's her quote, in relation to cocktail culture as a driving force in the rise of rye. So cocktails began showcasing the spirit as a hero, and consumers switched to pungent single malts that reeked of smoke, sweet dark bourbons that absorbed all the char out of their barrels, and spicy high proof rye whiskey, all of which challenged the palate. And we're talking about the palate changing just now, in keeping with the brave new age of adventurous eating and drinking. And then we talk about this, which is perfect for our 2 below. Canadian rye whiskey is about to come out of its shadow. So I like this view. It's one that many that are not in this industry would immediately consider. We don't always think about this, but it is a driving force. And I think, Don, did you not have, when you were starting your whiskeys, did you not go out into the greater Toronto area and talk to all the bartenders and the hotels to try to get your rye on board as well? Was that you or Mike?
That was Mike. Mike was living downtown at the time, and he would venture out into different bars and a lot of the cool places. So like for our rum program, even he went into like tiki bars and rum focused bars. And he did bring the ryes in, and a lot of people love them because we're trying to make that bolder rye, that spicier rye. That's what I love to drink. And it's funny because when I started the distillery, it was all single malt. That's what I wanted to make. And when I made my first rye, I really didn't care as much about the single malts. It was all about the rye at that point. And it's amazing how I just flipped like that. Plus, I have a hard time making single malt, as we've discussed in the past. They're not that great. So
I think you do a great job. Anyway,
I think you're doing okay, not to worry.
And you know what? My knowledge of cocktails and cocktail culture is really limited. And Davin, you with Blair should have been on here as well today. You could have really helped me out with this. Can you explain the quote to its full potential? It really relate to me how cocktail culture helped with rye in North America, because I love where rye is now. And if I have to owe it to the cocktail culture, I'll give them all the kudos in the world. But I need that link, please, if one of you can do that for me.
Well, I think Carlo can speak to that.
The cocktail culture, it was a long, slow burn at first. It was and it dates all the way back to a guy named Joe Baum, who some of you may be familiar with. He started Windows on the World, the Four Seasons, and he was redoing the Rainbow Room, and he got Dale DeGroff to be his barman. Dale does not like the word mixologist. And he said, I want you to go out and get this classic bar guide, Jerry Thomas's book on cocktails. And Dale told this great story about, he went to the local Doubleday store and they said, that's a clicker right off the bat, right? Because they haven't been around for 30 years at least. And they said, yeah, no, we don't have it. And he went to all these bookstores and nobody had it. So he finally went to the old Scribner's store that had an antique book section. And the guy said, yeah, when we find it, it'll cost you about $300 basically, or some such crazy number, because it's not in print. It's an old antique book. And Dale was good friends with Dave Wondrich and Gaz Reagan. And so he got this book, and they kind of rediscovered that most of the cocktails, whiskey cocktails, that Jerry Thomas was making were made with rye and not with bourbon, which was a kind of a big surprise to all of them. And all of them really were enthralled with the idea of, well, let's find out more about rye. I mean, you're talking at that time, as we just talked recently, there were maybe 5 labels left. The Pikesville, the Rittenhouse, the Beam, Pikesville. There were just a few. And as the famous quote goes, we spill more bourbon than we make rye. So it wasn't a prevalent thing. And then that started to build. Audrey started pushing those kinds of cocktails. And she had a young guy named Jim Meehan who started Please Don't Tell. There were a number of people who were out there doing that. Milk and Honey, Agu Club, Please Don't Tell, Dead Rabbit. They started pushing more and more rye, saying, if you're going to have a Manhattan, you're not going to have it here with bourbon. You're going to have it with rye, because that spiciness is what you're supposed to be pushing up against. That when you're having an old fashioned, it should be made with rye, because that spiciness is pushing up against the fruit. That's the whole point of why you started making blended cocktails to begin with, because the whiskeys were much bigger and bolder in those days. So that was the true beginning of it. And it started to grow from there. And that's and Dave Minton and Christine Sismondo were very friendly with that whole group of people. And Dave was telling me stories about, and so was Christine, about going down to New York City and going to these very bars and hanging out with these very people and coming back and saying, hey, this is what's happening. We gotta be on top of this. And that slowly starts to bring back the goal of bringing back rye. There was a great piece in the New York Times where Eric Asimov had Lou Bryson on from Malt Advocate. He had Florence Fabricant, who was a great food columnist. She wrote books on cheese, and they had Dave Wondrich, and they tasted what ryes you could find at the time. And there were other than like half the bottlings were extant bottlings from years before that were, 10 and 12 years old that no normal person was going to find, and then they had to, finally quell down to the leftover labels. And that started the trend. And one of the great stories that Amanda Schuster told me, Amanda Schuster is another wonderful American cocktail writer, she and Amy Zavato. And she was working at Astor Wines and Spirits, and they were starting to sell rye. And they couldn't get more rye from the big producers. And that's how Manhattan Rye, what's his name? I can't think of his name. Anyway, Manhattan Rye from Tuttletown. That was one of the ones they brought in because they didn't have rye to put on the shelves. And
Ralph Enzo?
Because it wasn't anything like the ryes that they had. It was this big, bold, spicy rye, and that took off. And suddenly, that's where craft spirits really pushed the entire industry, because crafters had already started to latch on to rye, saying, "Here's an opportunity that the big guys aren't really watching." And when their opportunity came, there were a number of small crafters who just charged right through that gate, and that pushed craft distilling in America, and it pushed rye into the forefront.
Carlo, is it Ralph Arenzo?
Ralph Arenzo, thank you very much. Ralph will shoot me if he sees this.
Well, I'm here. I got my notes in front of me, buddy.
Thank God.
I do. I have to. But so things are burgeoning in New York City. So is it going from New York to Detroit, Chicago, LA, down to Toronto? Vancouver has a great scene for
Right.
that as well. So is that kind of progression?
It definitely spreads to the big cities first, and there's this real drive. And I can tell you exactly, I worked with Jim Meehan to do his Please Don't Tell cocktail book. And I even said to him, I said, oh no, don't you make I talk about being a heretic. I was sitting there. I said, don't you make that with bourbon, the old fashioned? He went, oh, never do that again, and never have a Manhattan with that again. And he was hilarious, but he was great, and he was right. And as I said, I'd been lucky enough to work with Gary Reagan. He did 2 of his first books with us when I was down at a small publisher in Philadelphia. So these were guys I certainly trusted, and that's really what led to it. And yeah, it started to go to Chicago, it started to go to LA, Vancouver, Toronto, Dallas. I mean, you went to these major cities where you had a young cadre of burgeoning mixologists saying, no, we're stopping this right here, right now. And Dave Minton had a wonderful story when he had his place in Toronto, and he had this couple come in, and they wanted to order 2 Manhattans, and they wanted one with bourbon and one with rye. And this was completely unscripted. And they wanted to do a tasting because this is what they had heard. And he was thrilled. And so he served them, and they said, oh no, the rye is so much better. And it just sort of confirmed everything that they were doing at that time to try to push rye back into the major landscape, especially in the United States. I mean, you guys still had rye, but obviously rye's exploded since then, and I think a lot of the big push came from the craft distilling side of it. I know that the big guys have responded, but I think the crafters really pushed it.
Yeah, Lot 40 didn't start coming out again until after our guys started pushing a little bit more, and Don came into it, and other people came into it, and Still Waters came into it before Don. Yeah, so we'll give people that. And but you know what? I'm going to ask this question to Don and Davin. Do you notice that as a progression within our field, that it starts in the bars and restaurants, and what happens there kind of trickles down to you and kind of directs what you do? Or is it kind of vice versa? Because I thought it was vice versa. I gotta say, I thought it was vice versa. I didn't know the cocktail scene influenced the general scene within alcohol as much. So this is an epiphany for me. If everyone agrees and tells me I'm full of crap, so please tell me, is it from cocktail scene down, or is it vice versa here, do you think? Grassroots telling the cocktail people what to do.
I think the cocktails really do push things. And I can remember early days before I distilled, but I was in the process of building the distillery, going to specific bars on King Street and seeing Dylan's white rye. Okay. And they were doing cocktails with that. And that was, a very raw, spicy white spirit. And, already back then they were doing it. But what I think what changed for me was the Wisers group. I think what Don Livermore did with rye really brought it to the forefront. It maybe took what craft guys were doing before me, and I think it put it on that national stage to say, this is what a Canadian rye can be. Like, yes, we have wonderful blended ryes that are great, but we can also do these bold, in-your-face, cocktail, perfect ryes. And I remember the first time I tried Lot 40, I was just stuck. That was it. That was amazing.
And the last 2 summers, Dr. Don, Carlo, maybe you want to come in on this one time. Dr. Don brings our About Alberta Scotch Society, and I asked him, we're guinea pigs for him. is what we do. So I say we want to try everything that you are thinking you might want to put out. So we tried the peated rye, we tried the Eastern European rye barrels. And they come to us and they ask us questions. We love them all the time. So I don't know if they get the greatest response from us. Like, yes, I love it. That's the whole time. But I think he gets the truth. Sometimes it's not, but it is really rye with me right now that is pushing things and being innovative. Although we've had scotches that have been peated forever. When's the last time you saw a rye previous to 2 years ago, maybe, that was ever peated? How many ryes in different casks have you seen before? This is something really new, I think. Davin, can you shed some light on when in Canada did we start doing other things with rye? And I know the cast strength rye was fairly new, and Don's is fantastic. Although you only made, what was it, 67 bottles of it when it first came out?
48.
I got one of them.
Yeah.
Oh, it's fantastic.
Go, man, go.
But Davin,
I wish I made more.
I think the first thing we have to remember is that it was Mike Booth who developed Lot 40. And they put it out in the 1990s, and it's called Lot 40 because that was Mike Booth's great uncle's distillery.
Right.
So and I think that what we're seeing coming from the Hiram Walker Distillery now is great experimentation with barrels, and it's really doing things that people just wouldn't even have thought about with Canadian whiskey. And I mean, others do it. I mean, there's no question. I mean, they're not the first, but they're bringing it to because I mean, it's a multi-billion-dollar company, and they've got massive marketing budgets. They can get it in every bar. I mean, that's really what drives a lot of it. I mean, there are bars that really make a big difference because the bartenders choose what they're going to pour, but most bars are highly influenced by whiskey salespeople, who give them swag and all kinds of things like that. And so when you go into a bar and you see they've got all this particular brand, it may well not be that they like that the best. It's because they got there. But in any case, getting back to the barrels, like Don Livermore's PhD in wood extraction or extracting flavors from wood has really influenced what's coming out of there. So you get these Pike Creeks, and you get these Lot 40s, and you get various other whiskeys that have been finished with other kinds of barrels. And you're getting to, like, remember Union 52? Who was finished in a Lefroy, in a Isla barrel?
Right.
Union 52, Weiser's Union 52?
We don't get that in Alberta. Sorry, that must be in Ontario, only exclusive through your lovely LTBO. Yeah.
The best rye whiskey I have is made by Crown Royal. I have a case of it upstairs still, and I'm not parting with it, but I will give you a bottle of Union 52.
Okay. I've asked you for some of your own whiskey through them.
Yeah. Okay. If I can pour you some from an open bottle, but those
that's what I want. That's all I want. I've asked you like 10 times.
I've got a lot of Union 52. Because that really
your blood is
wonderful. So I think that what they're really doing some wonderful finishing things there. John Hall, of course, was doing finishing as well, and he was cutting his own oak and he was doing things like that. In the last little while, Corby has kind of taken it to the next level. John Jameson says Lot 40 Dark Oak was amazing. Last year, that was my personal whiskey, Lot 40 Dark Oak. I swore that was going to take over North America, and then they couldn't get bottles to put it in. And Don said they've got masses of it sitting there in the distillery, ready to bottle, and they can't get glass.
I know that from a number of big distillers that glass is a problem right now.
Yeah, that's
small distillers too.
Whiskey crime of the century, in my opinion, because that whiskey was phenomenal.
Well, thank you, Davin, because now I'll talk to Don tomorrow. I'll send him something. I'll tell him I'll buy a barrel, and we'll keep it there for a couple of years. And the Alberta Scotch Society will bottle it ourselves, and that'll be fantastic. It's good. Don's also talking about working with different yeasts, coming up. He thinks that the biggest innovation is going to be yeast coming up. He says it's been barrels for a couple of years, but he thinks yeast is going to start breaking.
Yeah, that's one of the secrets of why Alberta Distillers rye is so fabulous, and that's how you get those dill pickle notes that you guys were talking about on your show. It takes a specific yeast to do that. But that's why Whistle Pig is so amazing. That's why Masterson's is so amazing. It's yeast. It's the yeast. That's the secret, though.
I've got them all lined up. Everything you say, I've got them. And you know what? Why I'm doing this is because we wanted to talk about Alberta Premium later. Well, I'm going to bring that up and the things that Alberta Premium helped to create. You know what? I've got a couple questions, but I want to make sure Don gets his thing. New innovations with rye coming up, because we kind of mentioned a bit. What are you coming out with rye that's different in the future? And then I'm going to go to Carlo and ask how you two got together in the first place, because Carlo has some lovely words for both you and your partner there, Don. But let's go with the innovations first.
Well, as far as what we're doing next is we're going to be finishing rye in X brandy that we did ourselves and X rum that we did ourselves. So I did a 4-year-old blackstrap rum, and I finished a rye in it, and I'm going to be pulling it very soon. I think it's there. I just have to climb the barrel rack and find it. Up
and over and in. Yeah. I'll be there with you this summer if you want to wait, and we'll taste them all along the way.
And unfortunately, I wish I had more barrels to experiment with, but I thought it was worth the experiment.
Good.
And as Don Livermore told me, you can always blend it out if it's not good.
He said that a lot too.
Yeah,
I'm thinking he does that a lot as well. So there's no mistakes. There's just
opportunities for different
opportunities. Well said.
Yeah.
Let's go. Let's do that.
Except for that third cask I gave you.
Nice.
I think the third cask is fine.
Years.
Yeah, it's 60 years. Let's go. And we'll talk about older aged whiskeys in a bit too. But Carlo, what got you? How did you find out about Last Straw for one, and talking to both Mike and Dawn as well? Because you're lovely. You have nice quotes about them and what they said. But how do you get connected in the first place?
The first connection was the man right below you. Davin was absolutely super. I had gone over some of the distilleries that, he knew what I was going to be doing and who I was going to be profiling in terms of the distilleries. Yeah. And he said, you have to talk to Don. I think Don was the first person he insisted I talk to among the craft distillers. No question about it. And having been a craft winemaker and worked with craft distillers to do collaboration projects, I'm always about the crafters first. So I just said, I got to do this. And the more I read about what these two guys did, it was just fascinating to me. But as always, I owe my first debt to Davin.
Mm-hmm.
Aw.
Well, that's kind of you to say, Carlo.
Cheers, Davin.
But there's no question. I mean, when I was reading about what Davin told me some wonderful stories, several of which you can't repeat on air. And then Don and I got on the phone together and the email, and it was just tremendous. I mean, it was a real simpatico, and I believe in the yeast thing. For example, I'm just about to make a wine for someone else. And I said, well, we want you to make it just like the other. And I said, well, what yeast did you use? And they said, well, why does that matter? And I thought, all right, you already don't know what you're talking about. Talk to the original winemaker and find out how that worked out. So that's, it's a science, but it's an art. And I love what Don's doing. I mean, he's sitting there talking about barrel finishes. A lot of times people just go out and buy another barrel. He's actually using his own barrel. He's getting his own terroir from his own place. Doing that, he's creating a unique product that can't be, just reestablished like some mixed science experiment. So I really love that about what they're doing.
That's awesome.
It is awesome. Sorry, I was listening to my wife and I thought, that's awesome. Yes, that's awesome. It is. It's fantastic. I love it. And Davin, how many people do you actually help out in this type of situation? Do people reach out to you a lot from the industry and say, who do I contact in relation to this?
I think
Godfather Davin. Yes.
I don't think there is a popular whiskey book on the market
That
in which I did not contribute to the Canadian section.
Starting with this.
I can't think of a
Actually, I think
book that covers Canadian whiskey in any detail that I didn't either write or contribute to.
excellent. And it all started with these two. Well, this
And
started with-
Davin and I have worked together on a
It
It
previous
started with
book.
the hardcover, and then we
Sorry.
went to the soft cover, and then
yeah, I cheaped out. I couldn't find the hardcover, but these two are signed at least. So that there's the edition 1, there's edition 2. It started with that, and then into his newest one, the definitive guide. These are things that you should all buy. Those 3, and this one's hard to pick up. Holy crap! And this one.
this one.
Get all these. That's right. I'm working on.
That's it. You have to go to the gym now.
You should
You
bring
know
that.
what? I haven't for a while, and I feel a little bit weak,
Because of
obviously.
COVID.
So
That's the book you bring into the bar, and when you ask for Manhattan and he goes to make it with bourbon, you hit him with it.
smack him in the head with it. What are you doing, buddy? This book tells me you're wrong, and I have every right to smile. I love it. It's good.
You guys are getting silly.
Yeah. Okay. Here we go. I'm gonna throw a picture up and here it is again, because I like Seagrams, and I like, just because I'm Canadian, I'm trying to bring it back to us a little bit. So, Carlo, I haven't seen this much information on Seagrams that you have in your book since I read Davin's book. So this has a lot of information that I had in here, but I love it. Can you convey the importance of Seagrams to the modern day industry? Because you don't think of Seagrams. No one who's really a drinker out there that hasn't read a lot of books really thinks that they have a huge influence on the industry. So can you tell us about that a little bit?
Yeah, I'm gonna speak, and Davin, I want you to club me anytime I say something wrong. So because Davin
with one of Carlo's
more about this than I do, but the part about Seagrams that's fascinating, and I'm not sure. I think Davin and I have talked about this before, but I got to interview Larry Ebersol, and in speaking with him, you begin to understand. Number one, Seagrams was this giant.
That's the guy there, right?
Yes, that's him right there. So when you work for one of these big distilleries, whether it's Hiram Walker or Seagrams, etc., this is a 10-year program. You don't just get to be the master distiller. You start out in the bottling line. You start out in the drying room. You go work in the lab for a year. They move you around to a number of different spots. That's not the same experience that, for example, Don goes through, and it's a much bigger thing because they're building it in a different way. They have a different volume to manufacture. They have a different business to run. For example, one of the fascinating things that is true when you're talking to any of the people that work in a large company is that they're as worried about the drying room as they are about the bottling room. They have to make sure that the grain is dried out and worked properly so that they can bag it and sell that as feed. They are making huge amounts of money selling animal feed out of the back. Well, I don't want to say the back door. It's another front door that you and I don't think about, but that's a huge business to them. And when you're talking about making rye, they can only run rye for about 2.5 weeks. And this seems, Davin, you can tell me if you have a different piece of information, but from the conversations that I've had with Martin Laberge and other people, you can really only run rye about 2.5 weeks, not because your distilling program can't handle it, but you're going to ruin your drying room trying to dry all that rye, which takes, generally speaking, about 3 to 5 times longer to dry than the other grain. So you'll bust out your room, whether it's the belts and the dryers, or it's just sitting there and it's not drying on the floor while you're trying to mix it. So there's a lot of there in a big place like that doesn't happen at a smaller level that these guys have to think about. And when they build their whiskeys, it's not a single recipe. They're making X number of different recipes, and it was the same for Seagrams Canada as it was for Seagrams United States. You made a rye, you made a 60-40 rye. Later on, you made the 95-5 rye, and they experimented with an 80-15 rye as well for a while before the 95 came along. So, and the same thing was, so when they assembled a bourbon or any kind of whiskey, they were building it with parts. And it was the same, whatever Seagrams plant you were working at, we built it the exact same way. And the influence of that was huge. And then when the breakup of Seagrams comes, and Larry Ebersold and Dick, his name wasn't Dick Wolf, but I can't remember. They had to start selling off lots because the company has been bought, and bourbon has slowed, brown whiskey has just slowed to an absolute standstill. So they start selling off small lots of whiskey to start up crafters like Redemption Rye, High West, etc. Canada's selling off large stocks to Whistle Pig. You have a whole a series of experiences that haven't happened before in distilling since before Prohibition. I mean, again, Davin could probably speak better to it than I can, but that was the beginning of the rye, but that was also a completely different way of making whiskey than what I know in terms of, I grew up hanging out with crafters. So I watched craft distillers making whiskey and vodka and gin and grappa, because I made my own grappa with these guys and finished whiskeys and all this other stuff. But it was fascinating to watch that. And then when you go to a big plant and how it's completely different. And there's a whole bunch of people that grow up at Seagrams and then went out into the world making whiskey elsewhere. So I don't know, Davin, I'm sure you could speak to it.
Well, Seagram, there is no whiskey company in the world that has had as profound an influence on the making of brown spirits as Seagrams.
Absolutely.
The best rums are made the Seagrams way. The best cognacs are made the Seagrams way. The best whiskeys, Canadian whiskeys for sure, are made the Seagrams way. The best scotches are made the Seagrams way. Seagrams owned a whole bunch of Scotch malt distilleries, but they also made a lot of Scottish blends. And they're the ones who really sort of instilled this idea of using many, many different components. And as we were talking about last week, 50 different whiskeys go into Crown Royal, and it changes every year because the grain changes. And Carlo, I used to go to the distillery once or twice a year with a bunch of journalists just to talk about Canadian whiskey, the Gimli distillery. And we had all of those 50 different whiskey samples of all those 50 different whiskeys. So we can see that this isn't just something that they're just using as marketing. This is real. And you go to the blending lab in Montreal, and it's an 8-year program to learn to be a blender there, because that's how old the whiskeys are that go into the various Crown Royal.
Amazing.
They have a year of formal training with exams. You fail an exam, it's not like you
retake it. No.
It's like goodbye. You don't work here anymore. And it's but they did the thing because they own distilleries all around the world, and they own, even in South America and Africa. But they did the same with their rum distilleries. They said you blend it this way, because Mr. Sam Rothman said, when a man buys a Coca-Cola, he wants it to taste the same as the one he drinks tomorrow and the same as the one he had yesterday. And we're going to do the same thing with our whiskeys. And they're the ones who introduced absolute consistency from one batch to the next. And I saw how they do it with their triangle tests. It's infallible.
Yeah.
It's really quite amazing. So like Joanne Scandella, who got that Lifetime Achievement Award, she sells like 100 million bottles of Crown Royal. Every one tastes the same.
Right. No, it's an absolutely fascinating history. And what was really great is that Larry shared with me they had a manual, and it was their manual of distilling, which was absolutely just super thorough, like nothing you've seen. It was an absolute textbook. And And that's what all these guys were trained with, so that there was a complete understanding of what was going on between, one guy to the next, etc., and that there was no drop off in knowledge as you went through.
No, there really wasn't. There really wasn't.
It's amazing. It's absolutely amazing. And, and it's funny. I mean, of course, because you contrast that with somebody like Don, right? And then it's like going, because the whiskeys that they're making are fantastic, and then you go to somebody like Don or any other craft spirit maker, and now you're talking about like the auteur versus the Hollywood. It's a completely different world in that way.
Yeah, but with the Last Straw whiskeys, what you are buying an artisanal product.
Absolutely.
And you consistency from one batch to the next is just not a consideration. You're not asking for that. You're asking them to take this batch of grain and turn it into this batch of whiskey. And I remember tasting that rye whiskey that you had a few years ago, Don, and thinking, this is amazing. They'll never do it again. And
that's okay.
That's okay, right? That's the point. That's okay.
And scorn kind of just it just blew my mind. And as I said to Carlo, I said, these guys give me no confidence that they know how to produce great whiskey, but every time I taste it, it is fantastic.
That's exactly what he said. And I said, why am I going to talk to these people? He goes, no, they make great whiskey. He goes, they just won't make it again.
The one that I was raving about.
He absolutely raved about it, but it was like I was like, what? And but I totally got it. Having been a small winery owner and having made collaboration projects, I completely get it. That's the whole point of what you're doing. Is we're doing something different, and it's going to be different, and you're going to have to come along on this ride with us. We're trying to put out the best possible product, and just taste, and you'll see what we're trying to do.
And we keep our failures hidden.
Hey, that's how I got into the vinegar business.
Not you, Don. You put your failures right up front on my TV on this little show there.
But not out in the market.
I do want to say something. I'm going to interject really quickly. It's just this is an award winner right here, the Whiskey in the Six. And John Jameson, who's on the side, right? He's commenting. He's the one that donated. He gave me this bottle, which is fantastic. He bought it and gave it to me. So I'm just trying both back and forth. I just want to say thank you to John for giving me this. And he said this. Don, what will be what Whiskey in the Seven? That's his question.
I love that. Sorry,
I don't know if there's a Whiskey in the Seven podcast out there, but Whiskey in the Six. He's a podcaster from Toronto, and he approached Don and tell me the biggest difference between these. So color wise, and Whiskey in the Six is a 3-year-old darker whiskey. This rye is a lighter 3.5-year-old. And what are you thinking about it? So it's Whiskey in the Six, but how much rye is in it is my question, really.
I believe it's 20% rye.
Oh, I was thinking more. Okay.
No, 70% corn, 20% rye, and the balance is barley, malted barley. The other one is 100% rye, no malt whatsoever.
Yeah.
The Whiskey in the Six was done in a number 4 char, but it was a rechar, and it was it's either a Wild Turkey or Heaven Hill. I think it was a Wild Turkey.
Okay. I like Wild Turkey too.
But it was milled and recharred and charred to a number 4. The rye you're drinking was an ex-wine barrel from California that was milled and charred to a number 3.
So you like your STR casks then?
I like them for the price, but I've lost my Cooper because of the pandemic. So we're going to be ordering barrels up from the U.S. now. We're going to be moving to new American oak.
You can afford it. You're
I
selling
can't.
tons of stuff. You're good.
It's tough.
No,
it's tough.
New
oak is expensive, man. I get it.
It is, and it's not getting cheaper.
No.
Winery guy telling you that true. I'll believe Carlo when he says that. Let's go to Seagrams, and we're going to switch from Seagrams to, and if I could do the pictures here, from Seagrams to, where's Seagrams? There's my picture, from Seagrams to MGP. And we have a couple pictures, so if you could look at those from the front, Contradiction, which I have as well, and Whistle Pig, but this is what it looks like from the top, and it's a beautiful place. It's massive, actually, if you can think about this. This Indiana, correct?
Yep.
So
I want to go there.
yes, we want to go there. I want to tour, but if they're anything like ADL, Alberta Distillers, they're not going to show me anything.
Yeah, you went there.
And because of this guy right here, we have a lot of whiskeys. And at one time, MGP, you said, and I have a quote, but it's a small quote. I've always got lots. There we go. They supply 70-80% of the rye whiskey in America. And could you give me a brief description of the difference, first of all, and let's go to you, Carlo, between contracted rye and what MGP was doing for most people? Because they did contract, because if you go online, which is really cool, you can tell them exactly what you want and they'll do something for you. So,
right. So that's a new program. That's not what Seagrams was originally doing. No. Seagrams back in the day never sold a drop of whiskey outside of the stuff that they were producing for the marketplace. They didn't have to. They were selling all of it through, etc. And what happened was, as clear spirits started to dominate the market, they became a little bit more and more desperate. It wasn't MGP at the time, but it was Seagrams. They got sold several times. They had to start selling off stocks. I'm sorry?
Pernod Ricard, and then
yeah, and they started selling off stocks, and that was coincided at the time. It was that guy Dick and Larry Ebersol coincided at the time where rye started to rise in terms of the demand, and the distillers didn't have enough stocks to fill the marketplace. So now you have Redemption Rye and a couple of those other labels that you just showed buying up stocks, and and the Canadian distillers were just as happy at the same time because they weren't moving as much whiskey as they had been, and so they were selling stocks to Whistlepig, because Whistlepig became a big buyer of Canadian whiskey, and there were several others, but I mean they're the most certainly the most notable. Davin might be able to. I mean, with some of the others, but anyway, so at one point you had Redemption Rye and you had High West and you had a number of the other brand new craft distillers. And what they were doing was buying old stocks from, aged stocks from, what was Seagrams, now MGP or whatever the heck it was at the time. So they were selling anything from 2-year-old to, I think it was High West, or was it Ambler, who had a 20-year-old bottle of whiskey that they were selling, or 15 or 16. It was some outrageous thing. They hadn't been in business 5 years, and they were selling a 16-year-old whiskey, some crazy thing like that. Through these other channels, right? Now at one point in the mid to late 2000s, for about 3 or 4 years there, 70% of all the rye sold in the marketplace had been this MGP stuff that had been sitting on the floor for years, and they were just getting rid of it. Now, sourced whiskey is, I'm running around buying lots. When I say lots, like lot 2, lot number 3, lot number 4, whatever it is, of whiskey, and bottling them usually at my place. When you're talking about contract distilling, now I'm going to MGP or any other larger distillery, because now you see some craft distillers are doing contract distilling for other smaller distillers. So that's what you do. You go up and you say to Don, I want to make this kind of whiskey, and you tell me how it's going to get made and blah, blah, blah. And then you age it and bottle it, or you age it and then we'll bottle it, or we'll age it and bottle it. There are a number of permutations that go on throughout. Sourced whiskey is the problem was sourced whiskey was a brand new thing back in the early to mid 2000s. And so you had a number of people who were saying, oh, this is our new rye, but they weren't saying it was made in Indiana. They were saying it was made in Iowa or Utah or wherever the hell they were. And that proved to be a problem, because that's a federal offense in the United States.
The other problem, and you state this in the other problem you state in your book, is that everyone was expecting rye to taste like MGP rye as well, because they source so much.
They source so much. And the other thing too was, there was a great quote somewhere that somebody said saying, what people are going to find out is how great 2-year-old rye is. that everybody loves older whiskeys, but 2-year-old rye is an incredible product as well, which is true. And so you saw a lot of that happening. And yeah, there's a point where the craft movement starts to. There's guys like Don who start to make their own ryes, and now you get a huge difference between what a place like a Seagrams can create and what a craft distillery is going to offer to you. And they're almost like separate animals. I mean, Davin again can speak to it more than I can, but that was the picture that I was able to find out.
Let's relate this to Canadian whiskey, and Davin, help us out with this. So let's go back to Alberta Prem. So ADL. So they have a lot of stock. Obviously, it's 20-year-old whiskey coming out. This is $80 for a 20-year-old rye. It's crazy cheap, I think, when you think of an age statement with a rye, and I think this is fantastic. I like their cast strength better, but the 20 it is very good. I obviously, because I like it, and they helped out, like you said before. They helped out Whistle Pig, they helped out Masterson's, and in your book, Carlo, you said they also helped out Jefferson's, and that was brand new to me. I didn't think Jefferson's was helped out by ADL, Alberta Distillers, but. So I don't know when Jefferson's was doing it, but I was going to ask, do you think they're still helping out all of these different?
No,
I don't
no,
think
Jefferson's is not.
I don't think they're going to Jefferson's.
They're not helping out Jefferson's. No, not to
How
my
about
knowledge.
Masterson's, maybe.
I think so, right, Davin?
Last I heard, they were sourcing 100% from ADL.
That's what my understanding was.
But there's been a change of ownership, so who knows now?
Yeah.
And don't they do Pendleton's as well?
Yeah, I can't remember. Pendleton's is Canadian whiskey, but I don't remember whose.
Yeah,
If it's
I've got
ADL or
Pendleton's,
Highway.
and Pendleton's has Canadian whiskey on it,
Yeah.
but
I can't remember who the other thing about Whistle Pig is they're now growing. They're still buying in lots, but they are now farm to glass. They do have a farm to glass program that they've started.
nice.
Yeah.
And they have a specific rye. So they've really bought in. They've got 2 young women who are making the rye over there. They're doing a really great job.
And that's all. Honestly, it's the best way to do it. Sitting back objectively, looking at starting a distillery again, that would be the way I would do it. And I'm sure there's a lot of people who don't want to hear that, but this is a grind to do what we do. And if you could get product to market faster, get revenue faster, then you could build the distillery you want to build versus like what we did, which was the distillery we could afford.
Right.
Which wasn't
so the
much.
opposite of that then, Don. The other side of the coin would be that the whiskey you're putting out there that people are expecting, that are thinking is yours, then 2 years later changes. Now, how do you change people's perception before they get the new thing, thinking that and when it's a smaller distillery, you're expecting something different every time. Maybe it's batches, you think this batch, but
you just become open and transparent about what you're doing. And people respect that.
Yep.
If I have some source materials that I don't make, and I fully acknowledge that right off the bat.
Yeah, it's the best way to do it.
Yep.
And who do you help out? Because you were making whiskey for a friend that they're now on their own, I think.
So we've helped a few distilleries out. The Durham Distillery is on their own now. They've got their location in Durham region. It's actually an old fire hall from the early 60s, late 50s, and it's in a residential area, which is perfect. So Chris Ferg has got that almost up and running now. They're just doing the last final things. He launched out of here. Another distillery. Trying to think. We've helped a lot of distilleries, like small guys get going.
That's good.
But I've just taken 2 emails today of people that want to get into the business, and in fact, like Loose Took that's our 5th cask of rye, but I've allowed a guy to brand it and to get into the business in the sense of branding, because he wants to get into the alcohol business. And like I tell everybody, why do you want to get into it? Because I'm broke, but but there's a lot of people that are passionate about it, and he's loving it. So
it's not as lucrative as you think it is. Stay
no,
away.
it's not, and we've got some clients that are shocked, but we're pretty upfront. Like here's the breakdown of how the government takes money.
Yeah.
Like
you show them the books. Don shows
It's
them the books.
absolutely true. It's absolutely true. It's your partner. That's the one thing everybody tells you, and you go, yeah. And then when you get in, you're like, holy crap, they're my partner. There's just no lying about it.
And in Ontario, the LCBO is your partner, the federal government's your partner, the provincial government's your partner, depending on which way you sell your biz. So
it's amazing. It really is. And it's because it's not a hard enough business.
Well, gentlemen, we've hit the last little bit. I'm going to ask you for closing comments. We'll do our after dram after this and continue the conversation offline. But Davin, so congratulations, Canadian Whiskey Awards. Don, congratulations for winning stuff in the Whiskey Awards. And Carlo, congratulations for another massive tone, but we're going to talk about it again next week. So last comments, we're going to go Davin and then Don and then up to you, Carlo. Davin.
Great book. Thanks for inviting me to join you, Dolph.
Oh, you are always invited on this panel, Devin. You can add to any conversation. Thank you, sir. Don.
Well, now there's another book I have to buy.
Yes, there is.
Davin, thanks for the Canadian Whiskey Awards. Our second year in, we could not be happier. Keep it up and keep pushing Canadian whiskey like you are, because it's helping us get our stuff out.
Awesome. And the book too.
Yeah.
Way to go. Carlo.
Well, number one, congratulations to Davin for the awards. And thank you for everything that you've done for me and with me. Always a thrill. And a big thrill to be on with Don, because not only is Don a great distiller, but he's also helped so many people get into the business. And I know that's a double-edged sword in a lot of ways, but he's really been a huge influence on the craft distilling scene in Canada. And thank you a lot for featuring the Spirit of Rye. It was a work of passion, and I hope it was worth it.
It's definitely worth it.
Yeah.
Well, that's all the time we have. Whiskey brothers, whiskey sisters, whiskey friends. It's been a fantastic early evening, a later evening for you guys all in Eastern, because it's 9-something for you now. But thanks for our listeners who came in with us today. And John, for all the comments on the side, thank you very much for you. Thanks to Davin. Thanks for Don. Thank you, Carlo, for coming on. Absolute pleasure. And I'm looking forward to seeing you guys again as soon as possible. Join us next week, Saturday, January 21st, 5 o'clock Mountain Standard Time. That's me. 7 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And that's the 21st. My wife's saying 22nd. I think she's wrong. I think it's 21st.
No, it's the 22nd.
She's not wrong.
My wife's never wrong. Stop. We'll be continuing our 15th book review with this guy right here, Carlo DeVito. As always, I'm really looking forward to it, and you should be too. Final note, you don't want to miss a minute. Like, subscribe, and I'm going to see you all later. So, gentlemen, sláinte to you all. Thank you all for being here, and I hope to see you all in person one day soon.
Yes.
Cheers.
Cheers.